They tried to warn the arrogant aliens, never underestimate humans. But the Romulans made the gravest mistake of their vast and ancient empire as they stared down one lone human vessel, dead set on making the aliens regret their hubris with every last desperate breath. The indomitable human spirit isn't special, it's fucking legendary. High Commander Yaksa sat in his Grand Command chair, ensconced deep within the massive orbital battle station. The red supergiant star bathed the room in an ominous crimson glow. An alert blared overhead as the hollow screen flashed an urgent transmission from the remote borders of Romulan space. Honored Yaksa, we've lost all contact with Battlefleet Zorax. Last message indicated they were engaged with a single human ship. Yaksa snorted a guttural laugh. A single human ship? Destroying our battle fleet? Nonsense. Get me a status report immediately. The comms officer gulped nervously. Sir, they're gone. The whole fleet. Destroyed. Yaksa's eyes widened. He leapt to his feet, towering over his subordinates. Impossible! The humans are nothing. A tiny, primitive species. There must be some mistake. The station's lorekeeper stepped forward, his aged eyes narrowed to slits. Commander, I must remind you, there have long been stories, whispered legends of these humans and their tenacity. They say no force in the galaxy can match a human's will to survive and conquer. Yaksa waved a dismissive hand. Old wives' tales. We are Romulans. We have held dominion over the stars for 10 millennia. No upstart species will challenge our supremacy. But seeds of doubt crept into Yaksa's mind. He barked an order. I want all data on these humans. Now. Information flooded in. A history of bloodshed and conquest, cruelty and valor, greed and sacrifice. Yaksa pored over accounts of human wars, human triumphs against impossible odds, a species that thrived on adversity, rising from the ashes of their own self-destruction like a defiant phoenix. And the lone human ship, captained by the infamous Stephen Davis, a man known for unorthodox tactics and sheer audacity, a living avatar of humanity's unstoppable drive. A cold realization gripped Yaksa's hearts. The Romulan Empire had rested too long on its laurels, grown fat and complacent. But now this, a species with the raw fury and dynamism to shatter their stagnant hold on the galaxy. This threat could not stand. Yaksa growled a command through clenched teeth. Converge all nearby ships on that human's last position. We will drown them in our numbers, scour them from the stars. Let their crushed and shattered remains serve as a lesson to any other species who dares defy us. The orders went out. The mighty Romulan war machine ground into motion, an empire determined to snuff out the flame of humankind before it could grow into an all-consuming inferno. In the cold void of space, the forces of two civilizations hurtled towards a cataclysmic collision. Romulan might and wisdom against raw human defiance and ingenuity. The fate of the galaxy itself hung in the balance. The future would be shaped by the outcome of this clash. Could the Romulan Star Empire stamp out this precocious threat? Or would the relentless spirit of humanity prove the undoing of a galactic hegemony that had endured for time immemorial? Only one thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same again. Amidst the cold, dark expanse of space, a lone human ship flees, dodging and weaving through a treacherous field of asteroids. At the helm, Captain Stephen Davis grits his teeth, his hands clenched around the controls as he pushes his vessel to its limits. Behind him, the pursuing Romulan forces close in, their massive ships casting ominous shadows across the starscape. Davis banks hard, narrowly evading a barrage of plasma torpedoes that sizzle past his ship, impacting against the rocky surface of a nearby asteroid. The explosion sends shards of jagged debris hurtling through the void, forcing the Romulans to take evasive action. Seizing the momentary reprieve, Davis deftly navigates his ship into a dense nebula field, the swirling gases and ionized particles providing a measure of cover from the Romulan sensors. As he does so, his fingers fly across the comms panel, frantically entering a series of codes. This is Captain Stephen Davis of the ISS Indomitable. He speaks into the transmitter, his voice steady despite the chaotic situation. I am encountering hostile alien forces. They have already destroyed one of our fleets. I repeat, Earth is facing an imminent threat, requesting immediate reinforcements. Light years away, in the command center of Earth's military headquarters, the message is received. Alarm bells ring out as the severity of the situation becomes clear. Generals and admirals huddle around holo displays, studying the data streaming in from Davis's ship. "Mobilize the fleet," orders the highest-ranking officer, her face grim with grit. "We cannot allow this aggression to stand. Humanity's very existence may be at stake." Back in the nebula field, Yaxa's forces have regrouped, their sensors probing the murky depths for any sign of the human ship. Frustration mounts as the minutes tick by without success. "Enough of this cat-and-mouse game," Yaxa snarls, his patience wearing thin. "All ships converge on the human's last known position. Unleash everything we have. I want that ship reduced to atoms." The Romulan vessels surge forward, their weapons primed and ready. Plasma torpedoes and energy beams lance out into the nebula, the searing light of their passage illuminating the swirling gases in a hellish display. But Davis is ready. With a grim smile, he reaches out and presses a single button on his console. Throughout the nebula, a series of strategically placed mines detonate, their explosive yield amplified by the volatile gases surrounding them. The resulting shockwave is catastrophic. Romulan ships are tossed about like toys, their hulls buckling and shattering under the immense forces at play. Some are destroyed outright, consumed by the ravenous fireballs that engulf them. Others are left drifting, their systems crippled and crew incapacitated. Seizing the advantage, Davis goes on the attack. His ship darts through the chaos, its advanced human weaponry proving devastatingly effective against the disoriented Romulans. Graviton bombs tear through their shields, crushing vital systems and leaving ships dead in space. Phase-shifting missiles pass through physical barriers to detonate within the heart of Romulan vessels, reducing them to expanding clouds of debris. On the bridge of his command ship, Yaxa watches the carnage unfold with growing horror. The reports flooding in paint a grim picture. His fleet is being decimated, picked apart by a single human ship and its audacious captain. "Fall back," he commands, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "All remaining ships, fall back and regroup at the station. We must reassess our strategy." As the battered Romulan fleet limps away, Davis allows himself a moment of satisfaction. But he knows this is just getting started. The Romulans will not take this humiliation lightly. Earth must be warned. Preparations must be made. For this, he realizes with a heavy heart, is only the beginning of something much larger, a conflict that could reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. The void of space erupted into chaos as human reinforcements tore through the fabric of reality. Warp drives disengaged, leaving a small but formidable fleet of Earth warships facing down the Romulan armada. At their helm stood Admiral Marcus Hendricks, his weathered face set in stone as he surveyed the battlefield. "All ships, engage at will," Hendricks commanded, his voice carrying across the comms. "Show these Romulans what humanity's made of." The human fleet surged forward, energy weapons lancing out to strike Romulan shields. Explosions blossomed in the void as the two forces clashed. Aboard the ISS Indomitable, Captain Stephen Davis saw his chance. The Romulan bombardment faltered for a split second as they redirected their attention to the new threat. "Now or never," Davis muttered, his hands dancing across the helm controls. The Indomitable lurched forward, engines screaming as Davis pushed them beyond their limits. Romulan energy beams sizzled past the hull, missing by mere meters as the human ship weaved through the defensive screen. "Fire disruptors," Davis bellowed. "Target their power relays." A salvo of missiles streaked from the Indomitable, zeroing in on the massive Romulan station. They impacted in rapid succession, each blast tearing through vital systems. The station's shields flickered and died. Admiral Hendricks didn't miss a beat. Concentrate all fire on that station. Hit them with everything we've got. Human ships unleashed hell. Phased Polaron torpedoes and quantum singularity missiles slammed into the exposed station. Whole sections of the structure buckled and shattered, venting atmosphere and debris into space. Inside the command center, High Commander Yaksa stumbled as another impact rocked the station. Alarms blared. Smoke filled the air. "Status report," Yaksa roared. "Shields are down," a subordinate replied, panic evident in his voice. "Hull integrity failing. We can't take much more of this." Yaksa's eyes narrowed. "Reroute all power to the plasma cannon. We'll vaporize their entire fleet in one shot." Energy coursed through the station as the ancient weapon began to charge. On the Indomitable's sensors, Davis watched the power spike with growing dread. "Oh, no you don't," he growled. Without hesitation, Davis yanked his ship around, rocketing straight for the cannon's firing arc. "Captain, what are you doing?" his first officer shouted. "Saving the fleet," Davis replied grimly. "Divert all power to forward deflectors." The Indomitable's experimental shields flared to life just as the Romulan cannon fired. A lance of pure energy slammed into the human ship. For a moment, it seemed to hold, the blast splitting around the deflector field. Then reality itself seemed to tear apart. The resulting detonation sent a shockwave rippling across the battlefield. Ships on both sides tumbled out of control, their systems overloaded by the surge of energy. Where the Indomitable had been, nothing remained but scattered debris. As the chaos subsided, Admiral Hendricks seized control of the situation. "All ships, focus fire on that station. Don't let up until it's space dust." Human warships unleashed a final barrage. Quantum torpedoes and graviton beams systematically tore the Romulan stronghold apart. Yaksa could only watch in horror as his command crumbled around him. "All remaining ships," Yaksa snarled. "Charge the human fleet. We die with honor." The surviving Romulan vessels surged forward in a desperate last stand. But it was too late. Human ships, now bolstered with salvaged Romulan tech, cut through their attackers with surgical precision. One by one, the Romulan ships winked out of existence. As the last enemy vessel exploded into a brilliant fireball, Admiral Hendricks allowed himself a moment to breathe. The battle was over. They had won. "Secure the area," Hendricks ordered, "and get me a channel to Earth. They need to know what's happened here." Hendricks's weathered fingers tapped out a message, detailing their hard-fought victory and the ultimate sacrifice of Captain Stephen Davis. As he hit send, Hendricks knew the repercussions of this day would echo across the stars for generations to come. Back on Earth, the message arrived. Government officials and military brass crowded around screens, digesting the monumental news. Humanity had faced its first true test among the stars, and emerged victorious. In homes and public squares across the planet, people gathered to hear the news. There were tears for those lost, Captain Davis chief among them. But there was also a swelling pride. Humanity had proven itself on the galactic stage. The message was clear. Earth would not be cowed. They had taken their place among the stars, and they were here to stay. "All ships commence recovery operations." Admiral Hendricks's voice crackled over the comms. "Search for survivors and retrieve Captain Davis's remains." The fleet dispersed, scouring the debris field for any signs of life. Aboard the ISS Valiant, Lieutenant Sarah Chen led a team to the shattered remnants of the Indomitable. They materialized amidst twisted metal and sparking wires, the acrid smell of burnt circuitry filling their sealed helmets. "Life signs detected!" Chen shouted, her scanner pinging urgently. It's Captain Davis!" They found him trapped beneath a fallen bulkhead, his suit's emergency beacon barely functioning. Chen's team worked frantically, cutting through metal and clearing debris. Davis was unconscious, his face pale and drawn, but he was alive. "Valiant, we need emergency transport," Chen barked into her comms. "Medical team on standby." In the Valiant's medbay, doctors and nurses swarmed around Davis's broken body. They worked tirelessly, mending bones, sealing wounds, and stabilizing his vital signs. Hours passed before the lead physician finally stepped back, exhaustion etched on his face. "He's stable," the doctor announced, "but it was touch and go for a while there." Admiral Hendricks stood vigil by Davis's bedside. Slowly, the captain's eyes fluttered open. "Admiral," Davis croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The ship." "Easy, Stephen," Hendricks said, leaning in. "You're safe now. How did you survive?" Davis recounted his escape in halting words. The ejection, mere seconds before impact. The reinforced escape pod tumbling through the chaos of battle. His voice grew stronger as he spoke, the fire of survival burning in his eyes. The mood aboard the human fleet lifted with news of Davis' survival, but their jubilation was short-lived. Alarms blared across every ship, sensors lighting up with dire warnings. "Admiral!" a young ensign called out, her voice tight with fear. "Long-range scans detecting a massive Romulan fleet incoming. It's their entire armada, sir." Hendrix's face hardened as he studied the tactical display. The sheer number of enemy ships was staggering. "It's Praetor Valkyra," he said grimly. "She's coming to finish what Yaxa started." In the war room of the Valiant, Hendricks and a newly recovered Davis pored over star charts and tactical readouts. The situation looked bleak. "We're outnumbered and outgunned," Davis said, his fingers tracing potential attack vectors. "But we've got something they don't expect. Intimate knowledge of their tech." Hendricks nodded, a plan forming. "We captured significant data from the station and Yaxa's ships. If we can adapt our systems, we might just stand a chance," Davis finished. The next hours were a frenzy of activity. Human scientists and engineers worked non-stop, modifying shields and weapons based on the stolen Romulan data. As Valkyra's fleet drew ever closer, the human ships dispersed into a carefully planned formation. "All ships, this is Admiral Hendricks," his voice rang out across the fleet. "You all know what we're up against, but remember, we've already bloodied their nose once. Now it's time to show them what humanity is really made of." The space between the fleets erupted in a storm of weapons fire. Human ships darted and weaved, their newly modified sensors piercing Romulan cloaking fields. Torpedoes found their marks with uncanny accuracy, while hastily reconfigured shields deflected Romulan energy weapons. Aboard a sleek stealth frigate, Captain Davis led the charge. His ship danced through the Romulan lines, striking at vital systems and vulnerable points. Each precision strike left chaos in its wake. "Concentrate fire on Grid 7 Alpha," Davis barked, his hands flying over the tactical controls. "Their shields are weakening." A Romulan cruiser exploded in a brilliant fireball, scattering debris across the battlefield. On the bridge of her massive flagship, Praetor Valkyra snarled in frustration. "How are they penetrating our cloaks? Divert all power to weapons. Crush them with our superior firepower." But the humans were ready. As Romulan ships dropped their cloaks to unleash full barrages, they left themselves exposed to lightning-fast counterattacks. One by one, Valkyra watched her mighty warships fall to the nimble human fleet. "Enough!" Valkyra roared, her eyes blazing with fury. "Prepare my personal guard. We'll board their command ship and end this ourselves." As alarms blared throughout the Valiant, Davis led a team to repel the Romulan boarding party. The corridors of the ship became a battleground filled with the acrid smell of weapons fire and the cries of the wounded. Davis ducked behind a fallen bulkhead, plasma bolts sizzling overhead. He caught glimpses of Valkyra through the chaos, a towering figure in ornate armor, her face contorted with rage. "For Earth!" Davis shouted, leading a charge down the corridor. His team moved with practiced precision, their modified weapons cutting through Romulan shields. The two leaders clashed in the heart of the ship. Valkyra's energy sword crackled against Davis's improvised shield. They traded blows, neither willing to give ground. "Your species is nothing but vermin," Valkyra spat, her blade singing through the air. "We should have exterminated you when we had the chance." Davis parried her strike, his eyes hard. "That's your problem, Valkyra. You underestimate us. Humanity doesn't know how to quit. With a lightning-fast move, Davis disarmed the Romulan leader. In moments, she found herself surrounded by human security forces, their weapons trained on her head. Valkara's shoulders slumped in defeat. I surrender, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As word of Valkara's capture spread, the remaining Romulan ships began to power down their weapons. The battle was over. Humanity had faced the full might of the Romulan Empire and emerged victorious. The transporter beam faded, leaving Admiral Hendricks, Captain Davis, and their strike team aboard Valkara's crippled flagship. The corridor they materialized in was bathed in flickering red emergency lighting, the acrid smell of burnt circuitry filling the air. "Move out," Hendricks ordered, his voice low and tense. "Davis, take point. We need to reach the command center." The team advanced cautiously, their boots clanking on the metal deck plating. As they rounded a corner, a barrage of disruptor fire erupted from the far end of the corridor. Romulan guards, their faces contorted with fury, unleashed a hellish volley. "Contact!" Davis shouted, diving for cover behind a fallen support beam. He returned fire, his phaser beam lancing through the smoky air. Hendricks and his troops spread out, taking up defensive positions. The narrow corridor became a kill zone, both sides exchanging blistering fire. The air crackled with energy discharges, the smell of ozone mixing with that of scorched flesh. "Push forward!" Hendricks bellowed, his weathered face illuminated by muzzle flashes. "We can't let them bottleneck us here!" Davis nodded, signaling to a pair of soldiers. They tossed photon grenades, the resulting explosions momentarily drowning out the cacophony of battle. As the smoke cleared, Davis led the charge, his phaser cutting down Romulan after Romulan. The human strike team fought their way through the ship's winding corridors, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. They reached a sealed bulkhead, the entrance to the command center. "This is it," Davis said, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Breach charges now." As the team set the explosives, a blood-curdling war cry echoed from behind them. A group of Romulan shock troopers, led by a towering figure in ornate armor, charged down the corridor. "Ambush!" Hendricks shouted. "Davis, get that door open. We'll hold them off." The corridor erupted into chaos. Hendricks and his troops engaged the Romulans in a ferocious firefight, energy beams crisscrossing the narrow space. The air filled with screams and the sizzle of flesh as soldiers on both sides fell. Davis found himself face to face with the Romulan leader, Commander Karras, Valkara's personal bodyguard. Karras swung a massive battle axe, forcing Davis to duck and weave. "Your species will be erased from history," Karras roared, his axe cleaving through the air. Davis parried with his phaser rifle, the weapon's casing groaning under the strain. He kicked out, catching Karras in the knee. As the Romulan stumbled, Davis pressed his advantage, landing a flurry of strikes. Just as Davis gained the upper hand, a figure emerged from the shadows behind Karras. Praetor Valkara herself, her eyes burning with hatred, wielded an ancient disruptor blade that hummed with barely contained energy. With a swift, vicious stroke, Valkara brought the blade down on Karras's arm. The limb fell away, cauterized instantly by the weapon's energy field. Karras howled in agony and disbelief. "My loyalty, my years of service." Karras gasped, staring at his former leader in shock. Valkara's face twisted into a snarl. "Loyalty. Your failure has doomed us all. Consider this your final act of service to the Empire." Davis watched in horror as Valkara turned her attention to him, her blade singing through the air. He brought up his phaser rifle just in time to block the blow, energy crackling between the two weapons. "Your kind does not belong among the stars," Valkara hissed, pressing her attack. "You are nothing but vermin, scurrying where you don't belong." Davis gritted his teeth, matching Valkara blow for blow. "We've earned our place out here," he growled, "and we're not going anywhere." The two leaders clashed in a furious duel, their weapons a blur of motion. Sparks flew with each impact, the very air around them seeming to crackle with the intensity of their struggle. In a high-stakes endeavor, Davis feinted left, then struck out with his boot. The kick connected solidly with Valkyra's wrist, sending her blade clattering to the deck. In an instant, Davis had his phaser trained on her head, his finger tightening on the trigger. Valkyra, forced to her knees, glared up at Davis with unbridled hatred. "You think this is victory, human? I still have one final card to play." Her hand inched towards a control panel on her gauntlet. "Spare my life and accept my surrender, or I'll activate this ship's self-destruct. We'll all die here, and your fleet will be caught in the blast. Choose quickly." Davis hesitated, his mind racing. The fate of the entire human fleet hung in the balance. In that moment of indecision, Valkyra struck. With lightning speed, she lunged forward. Davis felt a searing pain in his abdomen as Valkyra's hidden blade found its mark. He stumbled backward, his vision blurring. "Davis!" Hendrix's voice seemed to come from far away. The Admiral and his team burst into the command center, their weapons blazing. Davis slumped to the ground, his life ebbing away. Through dimming eyes, he watched as Valkyra, hit multiple times by phaser fire, crawled towards the control console. Her bloodied hand slammed down on a button. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," a computerized voice announced. "Detonation in 60 seconds. Hendrix grabbed Davis, hauling him to his feet. "We need to go now." "No," Davis coughed, blood speckling his lips. "Leave me. Get the others out." The last thing Davis saw as consciousness faded was Hendrix's anguished face as the transporter beam engulfed them. Then there was only darkness.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.